I arrived at my parents' house on the day my father's will was announced. There was no one in the large living room, so I went up to my father's office when I heard my older brother's voice. Layla is rich. She will have enough, and you and I must get everything behind her back. I will take my father's watch collection. By the smallest calculations, there is $400,000 worth of goods here. Do you want a box with my mother's jewelry? There are emeralds, diamonds, and gold worth $500,000, and the paintings. After the funeral, I already took 2 out of the living room. A few years will pass and I will sell them at auction for crazy money. Silver services, expensive chandeliers, 2 of his collector cars, all this belongs to us. You take one car, I take the other. Layla now has a young lover. Her head is full of an affair with him. I endure a pause and return to the stairs, stepping on them loudly enough so that they hear that I have arrived and am approaching the office, and not standing under it for the last 10 minutes listening to their plan to take from me what my father promised to give me. When the lawyer arrives, everyone goes into the living room. The brother and sister sit on the sofa, holding hands. I decide that I will hear everything even better standing up. It is good that there was a chair nearby. Otherwise, I would have just sat down on the ground. From what I heard, according to my will, my father gave me everything. Not a poetic everything. Not the kind of everything that fits on a bracelet or inside a Hallmark card. I mean the literal, ink-dry, notarized everything. The business he built from a showbox of ledgers into a chain of supermarkets and logistics hubs. The estate everyone called Layla's house since the day I came home from the hospital in a crocheted hat. The paintings they were already whispering about. The watches my brother counted like chips at a casino. The cars he polished on Sundays. The silver that sang when you tapped it with a finger. The safe, the safe, the safe. My brother, Harris, blinked so fast his lashes could have cooled soup. My sister, Naomi, squeezed his hand so hard her knuckles turned paper white. Our father's attorney, Mr. Kellogg, half man, half filing cabinet, cleared his throat once, the universal signal for I warned y'all, and to each of my elder children, Harris and Naomi, he read, $1 million placed into their accounts within 10 business days of probate provided they do not contest this will in any forum and leave their sister in peace. Silence. I could hear the heater click awake and the old clock in the foyer swallow a second. Then Harris laughed. The kind of laugh you only hear in expensive restaurants and emergency rooms, the one people use when the news doesn't match the life they ordered. Naomi didn't laugh. She stared at me like I'd rearranged her face in my pocket and she wanted it back. Congratulations, I said. My tone was polite. My smile had edges. Father was confused. Harris announced to the ceiling, as if the plaster could notarize his feelings. He was grieving his own mortality. Layla manipulated. Layla worked, Mr. Kellogg said, in the tone that told juries to sit up. 35 years, starting as a purchasing analyst and finishing as executive vice president of operations. Your father was not confused. He was particular. That was the kindest word anyone ever found for him. Particular. My father could tell you the yield per square foot of a produce aisle by the way a customer squeezed a Honeycrisp. He could smell a shortfall in a quarterly report like other people smell rain. He loved me with that same precision. I was the youngest. Honest, he used to say, like a clean ledger. Smart, like your mother's hands. And hardworking, like my grandfather's back. I wore those words like a coat even in July. When my husband died another sudden after a long illness, as obituaries like to lie, Dad was at my door before the casseroles cooled. Move to live in our house, he said, voice like a brass hinge. You will still have everything. He meant the kind of everything you can't probate. The clatter of cups on a Sunday morning, the way the front steps give a little in winter, the routine that keeps your grief from flooding the room. We'd had a standing dinner on Fifth Avenue, my father and I. The first Thursday of every month, we'd meet at the old steakhouse with the velvet boots. He'd cut his ribeye with the patience of an engineer, then ask me about labor volatility in Tacoma as if it were a bedtime story. Those dinners were our cathedral. I would have burned every certificate with my name on it to have one more just to hear him say kiddo and argue about the citrus supplier in Yakima. So when Mr. Kellogg finished, and my siblings began to huff and whisper and shape their mouths around the word unfair, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired in the marrow, sad enough to sit down on the ground like a child and let the grief rock me like a swing. But I didn't. I was raised by a financier who taught me that balance sheets and spines are both meant to hold you upright. I accept the terms, I said, and my voice didn't wobble. And I accept the condition for my siblings, that they leave me in peace. Harris stood. We'll see you in court. Then you'll see me, I said, and smiled again. It had more edge this time. Wear a tie you can afford to lose. Naomi didn't stand. She leaned in like a conspirator and murmured, your head is full of your boy toy. We'll shake it and everything will fall out. I thought of last year, of the man with the long, rueful eyelashes and the ridiculous faith in sunrise. 20 years younger and the kind that makes you suspicious at first. I'd said no to him after a few dates, a careful no, a terrified no who has the energy to curate other people's judgments at 59. Then my daughter, my ferocious, scalpel-steady girl chief surgeon by day, holy terror by night, looked me in the eye from the end of my couch and said, Mom, you always taught me to follow my heart. If you love him, it doesn't matter how old he is. He could be my older brother by age, but you're good with him. He loves you. Give him a chance. I heard my own advice fall out of her mouth and boomerang back at me. So I gave him and Fade another try. I put my heart in a soft bag and handed it to a man I didn't expect to keep it safe. For a while he did. Those were not details I planned to share with Naomi, who could turn any confession into a weapon. I just looked at her like she was a math problem I'd already solved. Worry about your own head, sweetheart. Mine's under trust. We adjourned. Kellogg's people faded into the woodwork like competent ghosts. Harris's jaw did its favorite exercise, clenching. Naomi practiced the art of poisonous sweetness, hugging me with the chilly enthusiasm of a pharmacist. I let them. There's a dignity in letting people advertise themselves. When the last car tail lights slid down the driveway like red commas, I went upstairs to Father's office. The air still smelled faintly of his aftershave cedar and something old-fashioned, and the leather chair kept his shape the way old chairs do. On the wall, the portrait of my mother met my look with the same gentle challenge she gave me the night I told her I was marrying a man with a fast mouth and a faster mind. She'd loved my father exactly because he was impossible. She'd loved me even when I was. The safe sat behind a modest painting cornfields, a sky the color of a bruise. Father liked to hide crown jewels behind mediocre art. I turned the dial, stopped, listened, nothing. He'd changed the combination after his last surgery. Mr. Kellogg had given me the codes to the bank vaults, to the corporate servers, to the house alarm, to the garage, even to the ridiculous cigar humidor I never let him use past 80. But not the safe. I could have called a locksmith. I could have called security capital S now apparently, because dearest relatives can sprout fangs around money. But I didn't. Instead, I pressed my palm to the metal, the way I had as a child when Father taught me arithmetic, sliding pennies across the kitchen table and making me count them twice. What did you keep for me? I asked the safe, like it was a dog who knew tricks. It kept its mouth shut. The next morning, I drove back to my house in Washington, cedars tall enough to scold the clouds, a kitchen that remembers every soup I ever brewed. The answering machine, yes. I keep one, yes. My children mock me, blinked like a small emergency. Messages from the board, from Kellogg, from my brother already practicing threats in a voice he'd have to pay for. I poured coffee, put the phone on speaker, and called my daughter. Mom, she said, scalpel voice now, the one that cuts and cleans at the same time. Did it go how we expected? Worse, I said truthfully, and better. She exhaled. I can get down there this weekend. Don't, I said. Do something miraculous with somebody insides. Call your brother for me. My brother is your son, she said, amused. He's on night shift. He'll be furious he missed the theater. He'll get a matinee. We're turning our lives into security briefings. Is that really necessary? Darling, I said, looking out at the trees, if you saw the way Harris counted the watches in his pupils, you would hire a moat. I hired a driver that afternoon. I posted a job for an executive assistant who can run in heels. I called a security firm whose founder owed my father a favor that involved a check and a ruined senator. They promised a full audit of our stores, the distribution centers, the fleet, the IT infrastructure. Assume sabotage, I said, and listened to the way the man on the other end went still. He was an old army type. He respected a woman who didn't pretend danger was theoretical. In the evening, the young man called, the one with the eyelashes and the sunrise soul. How are you? He asked, and meant it. Which counts? Standing, I said, which is the only metric my father ever respected. I can come over, make dinner, or stand on the porch like a guard dog until your shoulders unclench. I almost said yes. Then I saw, in my mind's cheap movie theater, the way Naomi's mouth would twist around his name like a lemon rind. I'd been brave yesterday. Today, I was careful. Another night, I said gently. I have to read a corporation to sleep. He was quiet. Then, okay, I'm here when you want. When I hung up, the house sighed the way places do when they know you're lying to yourself. I set out my father's old notebook spirals and ledgers and his neat old world script that looks like a promise and started reading. In the margins, he'd left sums and notes that only make sense if you speak his private language. Halfway through, I found a Polaroid of me at 8 in a cardboard crown, glittering like bad decisions. In the back, in his tidy hand, for the rightful queen when she forgets. I didn't cry, not then. I put the photo in my pocket like a talisman and went to bed with my jaw tight and my father's stubbornness like a stone under my tongue. By dawn, the war had begun. It started with a video, of course. Grainy, vertical, filmed by someone whose qualifications include owns thumbs. A mouse scurried across a shelf in our Mercer Island store, tail twitching like punctuation. Then 2 more. Then 5, like a choir. The caption was predictable. Layla's luxury markets feeds rats better than people. It went viral before my tea hit proper color. I was at the store in 14 minutes, ponytail and boots and a face that said I do not have time for your apocalypse. The manager, eyes wide like saucers, met me with a stack of incident reports and a smell of bleach that could sterilize a sin. We traced the path back room to dry goods, the easy highway of cardboard. That's when I saw it, a hole cut clean into the baseboard, too crisp to be gnawing. And beside it, a handful of kibble like a welcome mat. I crouched. That, I said to the manager, is not an accident. That is a thesis. In the alley out back, security to ex-rangers and a man with kind eyes who could end a bar fight by blinking found a line of glue traps already set behind our dumpsters, baited and photographed. Someone had staged us like a theater and sold tickets. I called Harris. Thank you, I said the moment he answered. For what? Suspicion in his voice like vinegar. For saving me time, I said, cheerful. If you're going to hire amateurs, at least let them align the timestamps. The bait was laid 2 hours after your little burner phone lit up in that charming district you like. Tell Naomi to pick better help. These boys spelled subpoena with a P. He sputtered. I hung up. You don't argue with toddlers or criminals before breakfast. By noon, I had pest control, the health department, and a local reporter eating my sincerity in the back room. We closed the store for 48 hours, not because we had to, but because optics matter and I'm not stupid. I filmed my own video in front of the freshly sealed baseboard and said words like transparency and zero tolerance and we will prosecute. The internet liked my hair. It also liked the part where I promised to donate perishables to shelters rather than pitch them. You have to know how to hold the camera and the line at the same time. I have spent my entire adult life doing both. On my way home, a text buzzed from a block number. A photo. My young man standing in the lobby of a hotel I know too well, the one with the gold elevators and the rugs that look like storms. Beside him, a woman with a red coat and a familiar profile. His ex. The caption. How's that sunrise now? For a second, the world tilted. Not much. Just enough for your stomach to notice. I pulled over, breathed like my daughter taught me to teach my heart its manners, and stared at the photo until it was nothing but pixels. Then I called him. Thank you, I said when he picked up. For what? His voice careful, afraid, loyal, all at once. For saving me time. The words tasted like pennies. We're done, Layla, it's a no argument situation, I said, doctor voice this time. I'm stepping back from anything that can be used against me. That includes you. Take care of yourself. He started to explain something about debts and a casino and a final conversation that had to happen in a public place, and I hung up before his words softened me. I have learned to be merciful to other people and ruthless to my own weak spots. That skill saves empires and breaks hearts. Both things can be true. When I got home, I didn't cry. I put on my running shoes and jogged the perimeter of the property with 2 security guys who could probably bench press me in the house, and I listed inventory in my head like prayers: trucks, contracts, suppliers, lawyers, friends, children. My son called at dusk, voice warm as Anne or under lights. Mom, I heard about the store. I also heard about the hotel photo. News travels fast, I said. Gossip travels faster, he said. Do you want me to come over? I want you to keep people alive. That will make me feel better. He paused. I don't like him for you when he makes you sad. He didn't. I lied politely. Business did. Business doesn't sit in hotel lobbies, he said. People do. He's just a man, I said, and must have sounded older than I felt. Because my son went quiet in that way he does when he wants to lift pain off me with bare hands and can't because it's glued in. After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen. My father once teased me for renovating. You can't buy a better simmer, kiddo, only better countertops, and I felt the loneliness that follows a victory nobody asked for. Then I squared my shoulders, because I am my father's daughter and my own woman, and because mice and men are both predictable when money is involved. At midnight, my phone buzzed again. A video. Naomi, in the break room of one of our distribution centers, speaking to a handful of workers like a motivational speaker whose PowerPoint slides are forged. You are getting too little, she said, making her voice sound like concern and not hunger. Demand a raise. Demand respect. Demand a leader who isn't distracted by romance. Behind her, I spotted a case of our premium olive oil that had never been logged into inventory. Beside it, a man I recognized from 2 months ago, fired for skimming. I smiled. People always gather their tools in one place for you if you give them time. I forwarded the video to security and to HR with the subject line, "Please invite our guests to leave." Then I went upstairs, took the Polaroid out of my pocket, and propped it against the lamp on my father's nightstand. The cardboard crown in the photo leaned a little. Queenships do. I lay down, shoes and all, and stared at the ceiling until the plaster pattern looked like a map I could read. Somewhere behind that cornfield painting, the safe kept its secrets. Somewhere in the city, a brother and a sister sharpened their knives on each other's bones and called it love. Somewhere in a hotel lobby, a man I might have loved tried to clean up a past he hadn't finished yet. It was all going to get worse before it got better. Good. I do my best work in the middle of a mess. At dawn, security texted a schematic of the distribution center. "We found something," the message read. "Also someone." I put on my coat. The war had asked me to dance. I slipped on my crown. Security's schematic arrived with the cold light. Boxes and aisles, color-coded sectors, little arrows like a football playbook. Under it, to photos. The first, a back door propped with a broom, exactly the way I've told managers never to do because crime loves a draft. The second, Naomi, chin high, that red lipstick righteousness, standing with a circle of workers in reflective vests. Beside her, the man we'd terminated for skimming, Miguel, who had stolen with the carelessness of someone who thought family business meant Buffett. I drove to the distribution center with my driver, a quiet woman named Len whose shoulders looked like they'd keep my secrets from falling off, and 2 security guys who could probably fold a truck in half. The winter air had that metallic tang that says the city hasn't waked yet. Inside, the warehouse smelled like cardboard and citrus, 1,000 oranges keeping the night at bay. "Miss Albright," the site director said, walking toward me with the relief of a man who'd been promised a cavalry and got a queen in boots instead. "We've scrubbed the footage. Your siblings are imaginative, criminally so," I said, no smile. "Show me." They walked me through it like a dance routine. The baiting, the broom, the prop door. The pallets mis-scanned to charity and driven to a side lot where a box truck unbranded, unlicensed had slurped them up like a hungry whale. The so-called town hall in the break room at 11:17 p.m., Naomi passing around bakery cupcakes like communion while whispering numbers she'd never had to stretch to cover rent. The kicker was a sheet of talking points left on the table, logo of a workers' alliance that did not exist until 3 days ago, domain registered by an LLC Naomi Incorporated last week out of an address my brother uses when he wants to look modest. "Bless their hearts," I said, that special southernism for "I'm going to end this properly." "Do we call the cops?" the director asked, hopeful and a little hungry. "We do better," I said. "We call the workers." I climbed onto a pallet my father would have approved. He believed in elevation and clapped once. Heads turned. Forklifts hummed like curious bees. "Good morning," I said, voice carrying in the cold. "I'm Laila. I sign your checks, and I've also stocked these shelves, swept this floor, cried in that bathroom, and eaten more vending machine dinners than any person with a kitchen should admit." A few faces softened. "Aren't you tired?" my bones asked. "Yes," I told them. "Tired has hands. It can carry things." "I saw a video last night," I continued, "featuring a woman who shares my last name and none of my obligations, telling you that you deserve more. She's right about the sentence and wrong about the comma." A chuckle tumbled through the room. "I have found that laughter oils the gears of fairness. You deserve more," I said clearly. "That's why today I'm authorizing a wage floor increase across our distribution network effective now, not after a fight, not as a prize for chaos. New base plus shift differentials. Also, a safety bonus pool tied to the metrics you and I both care about, and a path for any of you who want to train into management without selling your soul for a blazer. Murmurs. A man in the back, arms like bridge cables, raised his hand. What's the catch? No catch, I said, but there is a trade. In exchange, we treat theft like a broken promise. It doesn't matter if it comes from a suit, a sibling, or a forklift. And we don't let anyone pretend to lead you to a better life in the parking lot with cupcakes and fake websites. You want a seat at the table? Take mine. 2 reps from each shift, meeting with me or my COA weekly for 90 days. We will argue. We will agree. We will move numbers. But we will not burn the place that pays our rent. Silence, but a respectful kind. Then bridge cable arms nodded once. Relief swept the room like a breeze after a heatwave. You can feel when a crowd decides to believe you. It sits down in your ribs and takes off its coat. I stepped down. Security took Miguel gently by the elbow. He didn't fight. Naomi wasn't there anymore, of course. Dramatists rarely stay for the cleanup crew. By lunchtime, my legal team had their sleeves up to their eyebrows. Harris and Naomi had filed for a temporary restraining order, citing undue influence and testamentary incapacity, phrases they learned from a podcaster who says pun intended after words like will. Mr. Kellogg, who has the patience of trees and the memory of God, slid a copy of a video into the court filing. Father, 6 months ago, in his softest sweater, reading his own will out loud to camera, adding footnotes because he never met a clause he couldn't annotate. He was crisp, exact, funny. My memory is not like it used to be, he said in the video, but neither is my golf game, and I never put the country club in charge of my money. The judge, a woman with salt hair and no nonsense, denied the tro in an order so concise you could embroider it on a napkin. Harris called. Of course he did. You think you can shame us into silence? You shame yourselves for free, I said. I'm just saving the receipts. Naomi was only what? I said. Tricking workers into risking their jobs so you can leverage headlines into a settlement? Don't worry. I offered them something you never have. A better deal. He went quiet. I could feel him straining for a new script. We still have options, he said finally. You had $1 million, I said evenly. Each, with the simplest condition in the world. Leave me alone. You're about to discover how expensive the opposite is. I hung up and forwarded a memo to HR titled, Clean Sweep. Within 36 hours, we had third-party pest audits in every store, cameras in every back room streaming to a dashboard I could bring up on my phone, QR codes on freezer doors linking customers to life compliance stats. And our perishables donation doubled. Seattle food banks sang our praises without me asking. If my siblings wanted to stage vermin, they'd have to do it under brighter lights than they like. That evening, over spreadsheets and a bowl of soup, I forgot to eat. A thought ran laps around my head like a child at recess. The safe, father's codes. What did he know I would need later that he wouldn't put in a file? He loved puzzles not because they were hard but because they were precise. The satisfaction of a solution that clicks. I pulled down his ledgers again. On the inside cover of one, he'd written a list of dates: 03/05/97, 09/12/02, 04/07/11. At first glance, they were nothing but family anniversaries and store openings. Then a pattern flickered, half seen. Each date also matched one of our first Thursday steakhouse dinners where something important happened. The night he signed the Yakima supplier. The night Mother's remission was official. The night he handed me the keys to operations and said, "Try not to wreck my toys." The numbers hummed in my head. 3 minus 5 minus 9 minus 12 minus 4 minus 7 minus 11. Not a combination yet. A rhythm. I wrote them down on a napkin like a teenager doing algebra. Len caught me at it and set a fresh cup of tea on the ledger without comment. Good drivers know when to steer the car and when to steer the mood. The next morning, the war tried escalation. Someone posted a leak from our payroll system, a screenshot of executive salaries with a caption, "Surgeon children get trust funds while workers get table scraps." 2 problems with the lie. My children fund their own lives with other people's gratitude, not mine, and the salaries were 12 years old. I called the PR director, who once ran communications for a hospital and understands the optics of life and death. Tell the truth, I said, out loud, in words that look good in headlines. Publish our salary bands, top to bottom. Pair it with the wage floor bump. Time it to hit the morning shows. It'll make some of our competitors look stingy. she warned, a smile you could hear. I won't cry, I said, but I will send them flowers. We hit send at 7:14 am. By 8 o'clock, our brand was trending for the right reason, and the commentariat who love a redemption arc almost as much as they love a takedown turned their eyes away from mouse videos to spreadsheets. You don't win a war by arguing with rumors. You win by changing the subject with facts. At noon, a truck nearly died. A refrigerated 18-wheeler en route to a hospital contract milk, eggs, meals for a pediatric unit lost its brakes a mile from the Lakeview off-ramp. Our driver, a woman named Jana with the reflexes of a drummer, rode the gears like a bronco and took the emergency lane while praying in Bulgarian. She saved the load and 2 lives. In the undercarriage, the mechanic found a line cut so clean it might as well have signed a confession. The security footage at the yard showed a man in a reflective vest I recognized. Not Miguel, not any of ours. I watched the clip twice and felt the strange calm that lives under real fear. Put the yard on lockdown, I told security. Search for additional tampering. Move anything critical under armed escort. And get me the vendor list for traffic control rentals in the last 3 weeks. They'll have used a borrowed vest and a borrowed accent on it. My head of security said. He's ex-State Department, with a smile that looks like a drawstring you only pull once. And Laila, nice call on live streaming the back rooms. One of the comments spotted a time discrepancy on that first mouse video. We traced the edit. Our amateur film crew forgot that daylight has its own alibi. Bless their hearts, I said again. I do try to be ecumenical. I allowed myself 1 hour off the battlefield at sunset, just long enough to walk in the garden my father pretended to disapprove of. Flowers don't pay dividends, he'd grumble. Then deadhead dahlias with surgical precision. The wind was busy making lace in the cedars. In my pocket, the Polaroid felt like company. My phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. I loved you without a will and inheritance, and I still love you. I went to a hotel with my ex to put the final point in our relationship. We didn't rent a room. I went to pay off my debts at the casino, where I once lost everything until I met you, until I overcame my addiction. Let me be with you. Be your guard. Take care of your body and your heart. I read it twice. I am not a 16-year-old in a prom dress, and I am not a fool, but I am not made of brick either. People are not single chapters. They are whole books with messy margins. My heart leaned forward like a plant toward light. My head put a hand out and said, no. I put the phone in my pocket with the picture and walked another lap around the property until my feelings ran out of breath. Inside, Len briefed me. We've got a candidate for assistant. Name's Hetty. Used to run ops for a shipping firm. Can juggle knives while doing calculus. Hire her, I said. If she can get my calendar to stop bleeding overnight, I'll buy her a tiara. Hetty arrived the next day with a stack of color-coded files and a demeanor that could disinfect a wound at 20 paces. In 10 minutes, my inbox looked like a museum exhibit, curated chaos. Also, she said, sliding me a folder. Your siblings retained a PR guy who thinks a fedora is a personality. He's pushing a narrative about ungrateful heiresses and family betrayal. Wonderful, I said. Tell legal to send him the no contest clause with big friendly arrows. And call the auction house. I want the paintings my brother stole cataloged as stolen art. If he so much as tries to authenticate them, I want the curators to laugh him into a police report. Hetty's smile was small and ferocious. Already on it. By afternoon, security confirmed what I suspected. The brake line saboteur rented his vest from a traffic control company downtown. The order was placed online with a gift card bought in cash at a convenience store across from Naomi's pilot studio. The camera there is old but not blind. The photo it yielded didn't show a face, just a profile, a jacket sleeve with a frayed cuff, and a watch I knew too well. Our father's vintage Omega. The one Harris used to polish, while he counted his disappointments. He hadn't even waited for the probate transfers before putting it on his wrist like an alibi. I sent the frame to Mr. Kellogg with a note, add to pattern of conduct. Then I texted Harris, you're not careful because you think you're clever. Be careful. No response. Fine. Let the silence do its own paperwork. That night, sleep came to me like a landlord. Demanding, unavoidable, a little rude. I woke at 3:11 am, with numbers still humming, the dates, the rhythms, the way father liked to stack meaning under mundane things like floors. I walked barefoot to his office. The painting of the cornfield looked more melancholy in moonlight. I took it down, pressed my ear to the safe, and let my fingers find their own superstition. 3 click, 11 no, 5 something like a heartbeat, 7 silence. I laughed at myself. Kiddo, I imagined my father saying, count twice, so I did. First Thursdays. Table 7. We always asked for it. It had a view of the kitchen door and my father liked to watch the choreography. The restaurant's address on 5th 520. Our anniversary dinners May and September. My mother's birthday December 4th. The last night we ate there November 7th. 7 minus 5 minus 2 minus 0 minus 12 minus 4 minus 11 minus 7. The dial resisted, then gave me one small, polite click. Not open, not yet, but the metal felt warmer under my palm, as if I'd told it a joke it almost liked. Tomorrow, I told the safe, we're both tired. I turned to go back to bed and caught sight of something under the desk, a tiny cardboard point, like a paper mountain peeking from a snowdrift. I got on my knees and pulled it free. The old crown, the one I made him when I was 8. Glitter flacked onto my fingers, onto the rug, onto my bare toes. Tucked inside the crown, a napkin from our steakhouse. Written in father's tidy print. The thing you think is valuable will always be WH-80 they steal. The thing that is valuable will always be what they forget. I sat there on the floor, cardboard thrown in my lap, and felt the kind of love that doesn't need witnesses. Then my phone vibrated with a message from Hetty. Early heads up. Anonymous tip to the health department claiming E. coli in the Central District store. ETA inspectors also rumors of a wildcat strike outside to locations at noon. I texted back, perfect. Schedule me at Central District by 8:30. Order coffee for the inspectors. And move the all hands to the loading dock. If they want a show, let's sell tickets. At 8:30 sharp I was in the Central District walk-in, hair net on, thermometer in hand, showing an inspector named Joan exactly how our temp logs records are tamper-proof and exactly why the anonymous tip would be better addressed to the person who Googled how to fake lab results on a Wi-Fi network registered to my brother's friend. Joan, a woman whose earrings alone could balance a budget, raised an eyebrow. Family, she said, with the sigh of someone who has one. They always think they're the main dish. We passed with enough gold stars to decorate a kindergarten wall. Outside, the wildcat strike had gathered, maybe 20 people, 3 homemade signs, 1 bullhorn that kept dying like a fish out of breath. Standing just outside the frame, as predictable as gravity, was Naomi in sunglasses. I stepped up to the line, raised my hands for quiet. Surprisingly, they gave it and spoke like I was delivering a toast. I'm here, I said. I hear you. We've raised wages. We've added safety pay. We're opening the books on salaries. We're scheduling real bargaining sessions with actual elected reps, not improvisations in parking lots. If you want to come inside and meet your new committee, the coffee's on me and the room's warm. If you want to stand here and shout, I'll respect your lungs. If you want to go home, I'll respect your feet. What I won't respect is strangers with bullhorns who learn your names only when the cameras are on. And then, because theater deserves theater, I turned my back on Naomi and walked inside. You could feel the crowd split. Some followed, some stayed, some stood uncertain, like birds considering a wire. By the end of the hour, we had 15 new committee reps and 3 empty bullhorn batteries. I do love a matinee. Back at my desk late that night, after the emails and the affidavits and a surprise bouquet from a food bank director with better prose than most poets, I stared again at the napkin with father's note. The thing you think is valuable. The watches, the cars, the paintings, they'll take those. That's what they understand. The thing that is valuable. Me, the people, the trust. He was telling me the whole time. Hold the right line. My phone chimed. A calendar alert. Dinner first Thursday. It had survived the sink, a ghost of our routine. For the first time since the funeral, the ache didn't flatten me. It hollowed me out into a bell, and the sound it made was steady. I fell asleep at my desk, crown tucked like a cat against my ribs, and woke to Hetty's knock. 2 things, she said. First, the judge set a hearing on sanctions for your siblings if they keep violating the no contest clause. Second, your brake line saboteur was paid through a shell company that traces back to a P.O. box Naomi rented in college. Sloppy funneling. And third, I asked, because there's always a third. She smiled. A small thing with teeth. A courier just dropped this. No return address. She handed me a manila envelope. Inside, a hotel receipt, no room number, lobby bar only, and a marker scribbled note. I'll wait as long as you need. I'm applying to your security firm. Prove me wrong about me. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I placed the note beside father's. 2 kinds of promises on my desk. one written in old ink, one in fresh desperation. Then I stood, smoothed my jacket, and looked toward the hallway like the finish line changed places when I wasn't looking. "Len," I called, "warm up the car. We're going to the house." "The estate?" she asked. "The office," I said, and felt the shape of the combination in my hands the way you sometimes feel a word before your mouth finds it. "I think my father and I have an appointment. I took the crown with me, not for luck, for alignment. Queenships do better when they remember why the palace was built." Down the hall, the cornfield waited like a stage curtain, and behind it, the metal heart of the house ticking for me. When I arrived at the estate that morning, the fog over Puget Sound lay thick as unspoken words. The cedars stood guard in their green silence. Len parked the car beside the steps, engine idling just long enough for me to breathe the cold air and remember what this house meant. My father's kingdom, my childhood stage, my sanctuary and battlefield all in one. I'd come to open the safe, but I knew just as surely as I know how coffee smells before it's brewed that what I'd find inside would change everything. The front door groaned like it recognized the weight of my intentions. Inside, the house carried the hush of expectation. Dust in the light, the smell of old paper, and somewhere the faint echo of my father's laughter, one of those things that clings to air long after the person's gone. Len stood in the doorway to the office. "You sure you want me to stay?" she asked. "I need to do this alone," I said, then smiled at her caution. "But keep your phone on, just in case I get stuck in a philosophical conversation with my father's ghost." She chuckled. "You've got 5 minutes, then I'm calling back up." The cornfield painting was exactly as I'd left it, leaning against the wall, colors duller now, like even the paint missed him. I touched the frame. "All right, Dad," I whispered. "I found the crown. Now tell me the rest." I knelt before the safe and turned the dial again. This time my hand was steady, the rhythm clear in my head. 7 minus 5 minus 2 minus 0 minus 12 minus 4 minus 11 minus 7. Click, pause, click, click. And then like an exhale from the past it opened. I half expected stacks of cash, gold bars, bearer bonds, some cinematic clutch of wealth. But inside was something that made my knees weaken. A small wooden box, the same one I'd painted with wild daisies when I was 8. A leather notebook. An envelope marked for Layla only when you've stopped fighting ghosts. I opened the box first. Inside, neatly arranged, were my childhood drawings, crude suns and houses, my mother's smile in crooked crayon lines, a sketch of my father holding my hand. Underneath them was a folded note, written in that firm, accountant's script I could have spotted from a mile away. "Kiddo, if you're reading this, I'm gone and I know you. You're probably standing where I once stood, plotting how to keep the wolves from the door. But listen to me. Wealth is a storm, not a shelter. The people who chase it think it will keep them dry, but it always rains inside. You are the only one who worked not for the money, but for the meaning. That's why I left you everything, because you understand that it's not yours. It's a trust, not just in the legal sense, but in the moral one. Protect the workers, protect yourself, and when the time comes, forgive your siblings not for their sake, but so you can rest. Love, Dad." My throat burned. I hadn't cried when the will was read, not when Harris called me names or Naomi threw tantrums, but that note cracked something soft and hidden. I sat there on the floor, laughing through tears like a fool. Then I remembered the envelope. Inside it was a single key and a slip of paper with an address, an old warehouse in Ballard, one I vaguely remembered from my early days in the company. Beneath that, one more line, "For the future. Open it when the noise gets too loud." The noise was already deafening. By the time I locked the safe and straightened up, my phone was buzzing with Hetty's name. "Layla, we've got trouble," she said, voice clipped. "Your siblings just went public press conference at the downtown hotel. They're claiming the will is fraudulent, that your father was coerced, and they're spinning it into a victim narrative. They even brought a few of your old board members along for credibility." I sighed. Of course they did. The disinherited always have such creative imaginations. "Do you want us to respond?" "Not yet," I said. "Let them sing. I'll write the chorus later." I drove straight to the Ballard address. The warehouse sat on the pier, weathered but dignified, the kind of building that smells like salt and old work. The key fit the lock perfectly. Inside was darkness then. As I flipped the breaker, light poured across a collection of paintings, each covered in dust sheets. When I pulled one back, I gasped. Not landscapes or portraits. These were all canvases painted by my mother. I hadn't seen them since I was 12, when she'd quietly stopped showing her art. She'd told me they were put away. My father must have bought them back from the gallery and hidden them here, preserving what she loved most. At the far end of the room sat a sculpture and finished abstract, unmistakably hers. A plaque at the base read, "For our daughter, who builds empires out of empathy." I leaned against the wall, overcome. My father hadn't just left me money. He'd left me legacy, my mother's art, the soul of our family, unseen and unspoiled. That's what he meant by what they forget. Harris and Naomi had stolen what glitters. I had inherited what shines, but my moment of awe was short-lived. My phone buzzed again, Hetty's urgent tone this time. "Laila, I'm sending you something now. It's bad." The video arrived seconds later. Harris, standing at a podium, crocodile tears in his eyes. Naomi beside him, all practice grace. "Our sister," he was saying, "took advantage of our father in his final months. She isolated him, manipulated his finances, and left us with nothing. We only want justice, not riches. We ask the court and the public for fairness." Behind them, a slideshow flashed images. Me leaving the hospital after Dad's final checkup, me at the funeral, me signing papers in his office. Out of context, perfectly chosen for suspicion. "Turn on Channel 8, Hetty said. "They're calling you a fraud." I watched as the news anchor repeated their accusations with that neutral sympathy that sells ad space. And then the kicker. Sources tell us Laila Albright's young lover was seen at a casino owned by a business rival of her late father. Could there be more to this family drama? I closed my eyes, breathing slow. They were burning every bridge they could find, and they thought I'd drown in the smoke. But I didn't build my life waiting for rescue. "Get me Kellogg," I said, "and call our PR head. We're not defending, we're demonstrating." By evening, I'd arranged my own press conference. The ballroom at the Harborview Hotel, the same place where my father used to host fundraisers for children's hospitals. Fitting. When I walked onto the stage, the cameras flashed like lightning. I smiled, an expression that was part steel, part serenity. "Good evening," I began. "You've heard a lot of stories today, some true, some imaginative. My father believed in audits, so let's have one." I displayed documents, medical reports proving his mental clarity, video recordings of his statements, testimony from the board. "My father didn't suffer confusion," I said. "He suffered children who didn't listen." The room chuckled. Even reporters can't resist a well-placed jab. As for manipulation, I continued, I worked in that company for 35 years. My siblings worked in it for 35 minutes. If dedication is coercion, then yes, I'm guilty. When questions turned to the casino rumor, I held up my hands. Yes, I had a relationship. Yes, it ended. And no, he didn't fund my father's funeral or steal from the family. He did something much more difficult. He made me laugh. And apparently in this family, that's the real crime. The laughter that followed wasn't cruel. It was the kind that told me the tide was turning. That night, Harris and Naomi's victim narrative unraveled in the news cycle faster than they could refresh their feeds. Kellogg sent me a terse text. Judge called. Their lawyers want to talk settlement. I didn't reply. I wasn't done yet. The next morning, as I drove to headquarters, I saw protesters outside the building, not angry workers this time, but people holding signs that read "Stand with Laila." My employees had come out for me, honest. Some held up paper crowns they'd cut from cardboard, glittering in the sun. I nearly cried again, but this time from pride. I took the elevator to my father's old office, now mine, and stood before the window overlooking the city. It glittered, alive and unbothered by family drama. Hetty came in, holding coffee and a folder. They're offering a deal, she said. If you give them $5 million each and drop charges for the sabotage, they'll withdraw all claims. I took a long sip of coffee. Tell them I'll give them something better. Hetty raised an eyebrow. Forgiveness, I said. It costs nothing and it confuses people. She smiled. You're terrifying. That's just efficiency with lipstick, I said. When the call came later that day, Harris sounded tired. You think you've won, don't you? I don't think, Harris. I checked the numbers. You're cold, Laila. Heartless. I learned from the best, I said softly. But don't mistake stillness for absence. I still remember when you taught me how to cheat at cards and then lied about it. You've always been the same, just more expensive. He exhaled hard. What do you want? To end it, I said. Take the $1 million Dad left you. Take Naomi's too. Walk away. Or keep fighting and lose everything. Your choice. There was a long silence. "You sound just like him," he said finally. "I'll take that as a compliment." After the call, I turned toward my desk and saw the crown again, glinting faintly in the light. My father had left me his business, yes, but also his wit, his faith in my strength, his trust in my judgment. I realized something then. The war was no longer about inheritance. It was about identity, about proving I could lead, love, and stand without anyone's permission. The next move, though, wouldn't come from me. Naomi always struck after Harris failed, and when she did, she aimed at hearts, not wallets. I had no idea that her next attack would be the most personal of all and that it would bring my young lover, the man I thought I'd lost, right back into the crossfire, and that though I didn't know it yet was when the real test of my father's words would begin. The thing that is valuable will always be what they forget. They had forgotten love. I was about to remember it with a vengeance. I should have known Naomi wouldn't let Harris' defeat sit long enough to cool. That woman could turn a bruise into a strategy memo. While Harris sulked in his condo surrounded by empty whiskey glasses and self-pity, Naomi was plotting. She'd always been the more creative one. Her malice came gift wrapped in charm. It started with a rumor, always does. An anonymous email sent to the Seattle Times, hinting at evidence of financial misconduct in my company: embezzlement, falsified invoices, misused charity funds. The reporter who received it had enough integrity to call me before publishing. "Miss Albright," she said, "we have documents, bank transfers, shell accounts. It looks bad." I asked for the sender's details. Of course, they were hidden behind a disposable address. But the attachments, they bore my company's letterhead, forged signatures, even my own scanned initials. My pulse didn't quicken. I'd seen this game before. "Print nothing yet," I told her calmly. "Give me 48 hours. I'll show you the truth, and you'll have a bigger story." That night, I met with Hetty and my head of cybersecurity. "It's Naomi," I said. "She's manufacturing a scandal. She always did love theater." Hetty's eyes flashed. "We can trace the metadata. If she forged internal documents, she left fingerprints. By morning, we had them." The so-called evidence had been created on Naomi's laptop from her own home network. Sloppy, but not unexpected. She'd always been a sprinter, not a marathoner, fast, impulsive, and gloriously reckless. When the reporter returned my call, I handed her a neatly organized dossier: digital trail, timestamps, forged signatures, and an affidavit from our IT forensics team. "You can print the truth," I said, "or you can print fiction and spend the next year retracting it." She laughed. "You really are your father's daughter." That afternoon, the Times ran a feature titled "Siblings at War: How Greed Tried to Rewrite a Legacy." Naomi's name appeared more often than mine. I didn't celebrate. I simply poured myself a glass of bourbon, Dad's favorite brand, and toasted the ceiling. "That one was for you, old man." But Naomi's next strike cut deeper. A week later, I arrived at headquarters to find the boardroom in chaos. My assistant whispered, "There's been a leak video footage." She pulled it up on her tablet. The grainy clip showed my ex-lover, the one with the sunrise eyes, walking into the same casino Naomi's rumor mill had mentioned. Then, shockingly, a second clip spliced in, him in a dimly lit room, holding stacks of cash, whispering something about her inheritance. It was an obvious deepfake, the lip sync just slightly off, the shadows to clean. But to the untrained eye, it was scandalous. Naomi had gone from petty theft to psychological warfare. I took a deep breath, straightened my blazer, and addressed my team. "You all know me. You know how hard I've worked, how much I value integrity. This is fabrication and we'll treat it as such." The board murmured in support. I saw in their eyes a mixture of loyalty and pity. They trusted me, but the stink of gossip lingers longer than the scent of truth. That evening, as I sat in my office staring at the fading skyline, my phone buzzed. His name appeared. I almost didn't answer. "Laila," he said, his voice rough. "I didn't do it. You have to believe me." "I want to," I said, staring at the reflection of myself in the window, strong, composed, but tired in the eyes. "But you're part of their story now, and I can't afford another weakness." "I'm not your weakness," he said softly. "I'm the one person who knows what it's like to lose everything and start over." I laughed bitterly. "Then maybe we're both experts in bad timing." "Please," he said, "meet me. Let me show you something." Every instinct screamed no, but curiosity has always been my fatal flaw. We met in a quiet coffee shop in Tacoma, the kind with bad lattes and better lighting. He looked thinner, older somehow, Humility etched across his face. Naomi paid someone to tail me, he said. I found the man. He admitted it. She offered him 20 grand to fake the footage. He slid an envelope across the table. Inside were photos, receipts, a sworn statement. Why bring this to me? I asked. Why not the police? Because you wouldn't believe anyone else, he said simply. And because I still love you. That broke something I'd been holding shut for weeks. I didn't say it back. I wasn't ready, but I didn't walk away either. He continued. I've applied to your security team. I want to protect you. Not just from them, from yourself, from burning out fighting battles that should have ended already. I stared at him for a long time, then said quietly, if you ever lie to me again, I'll bury you with the others. He smiled, sad and knowing. Fair trade. Over the next few weeks, he became part of my orbit again, but at arm's length. He shadowed my security detail, quietly efficient, never overstepping. Naomi, of course, didn't stop. She sent anonymous letters to clients, threatening boycotts. She bribed a gossip site to claim I'd been under investigation for tax evasion. And then, when that failed, she aimed for my children. It was a Sunday morning when my daughter called, voice trembling. Mom, Uncle Harris came to the hospital. He was talking to the board, saying you're being investigated and that I might lose my position because of your name. I closed my eyes. Darling, listen to me. You won't lose anything. He's bluffing. But Mom, no buts, I said firmly. Remember what I taught you? When they lie about you, keep working. Truth ages better than scandal. She exhaled slowly. You always make it sound easy. It isn't, I said softly. It just looks better when you wear lipstick. That afternoon, I made a decision. Enough defense. It was time to strike. With Kellogg's help, I filed a countersuit not just to dismiss their claims, but to expose the full breadth of their sabotage. The fake videos, the break line tampering, the forged financial records, every lie, cataloged and cross-referenced. Naomi and Harris were about to learn what it feels like to fight a woman who'd spent her life surviving boardrooms full of men who underestimated her. When the hearing opened, the courtroom buzzed with spectators, reporters, employees, curious onlookers, all waiting for the family spectacle. Naomi arrived in cream-colored silk, pretending to be grace itself. Harris wore his favorite smugness like a tie. I entered last, calm and deliberate, my hair pinned back like armor. Kellogg presented our evidence methodically, piece by piece. The judge listened, stone-faced, until the moment our cybersecurity expert took the stand. He displayed the metadata linking Naomi's computer to every forged document. Then the surveillance photo of Harris' stolen Omega watch on the break line saboteur's wrist. Naomi's face drained of color. Harris began to fidget. The courtroom buzzed. And then Kellogg played the Pi CDR assistance, the video my father had recorded before his death, explaining his will in full clarity, naming me as sole heir, and smiling at the end as he said, if my other children challenge this, it only proves I was right. The silence that followed was a living thing. Naomi whispered something to Harris. He shook his head, eyes dark with panic. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't gloat. I stood, looked directly at the judge, and said, my father loved all his children, even when we didn't deserve it. He left me his legacy, not his grudges. I only want peace and justice for his memory. The judge leaned forward. You've handled yourself with restraint, Miss Albright. I wish your siblings had done the same. She turned to them. I'm imposing sanctions for willful misconduct and contempt of court. All claims dismissed with prejudice. Naomi's lips trembled. Harris muttered something about appeals, but his lawyer was already packing up. Outside, the press swarmed. Microphones like spears. Miss Albright, do you have any comment? I smiled, that razor-edged smile I'd perfected over a lifetime. Yes, I said. Never underestimate a woman who's been underestimated too long. That night, I celebrated quietly. A small dinner with my children, Hetty, Len, and my new head of security, him. We toasted not the victory, but survival. Later, as the others left, he lingered by the door. So, does this mean the war's over? He asked. I shook my head, gazing at the fire. Wars end when people stop wanting revenge. My siblings don't know how to stop wanting. He stepped closer. And you? I smiled faintly. I'm learning. He looked at me for a long moment. Layla, let me stay. As your guard. As your, whatever you'll let me be. I met his gaze, steady. Then stay. But remember, I don't need saving. Just someone who doesn't flinch when the walls shake. He nodded. Deal. As he left the room, I caught my reflection in the glass, older, wiser, but not broken. My father's words echoed in my head. The thing that is valuable will always be what they forget. They had forgotten honor, compassion, decency. I hadn't, and that, I realized, was why I'd already won. But destiny wasn't finished. There was one more surprise waiting in my father's hidden past, something in that Ballard warehouse that neither Harris nor Naomi had found. Something that would test whether I could forgive them or destroy them completely. And I, Laila Albright, had never been one to turn away from a final act. It was the night after the verdict when I dreamed of my father. Not the frail man in hospital blue, but the titan who'd paced these halls with a cigar between his fingers and a ledger under his arm. In the dream, he was standing in the Ballard warehouse, calling my name. When I woke, the word key sat on my tongue like a command. By dawn, I was already in the car. The sky above Seattle bruised purple and gold as Len steered through the sleeping city. "You're going to the warehouse again, aren't you?" she asked. "Something's there," I said. Something Dad wanted me to see after the noise quieted. The warehouse was colder than before, the air heavy with salt and dust. I unlocked the door, the metal sighing in recognition. The room waited silent, patient as sunlight filtered through the high windows, painting stripes across my mother's canvases. In the corner, under a tarp I hadn't noticed last time, was an old safe smaller than the one at the estate, the kind meant for documents rather than gold. My pulse quickened. The key from my father's envelope fit perfectly. Inside, instead of jewels or cash, there was a sealed metal box and a letter. I opened the letter first. "Laila, if you found this, then the noise has started to fade. What's inside this box is not for profit, it's for protection. Years ago, I discovered things about my business partners that could have ruined them and perhaps me too. I never used the information, but I kept it. I suspected your brother might someday sell our legacy to these same men. If he does, you'll have proof of their crimes and his betrayal. But use it only when you must, and not for vengeance. A kingdom ruled by revenge always burns its queen first. Dad." I stared at the box for a long moment before unlatching it. Inside were neatly bound folders, records, emails, bank transfers, all documenting bribes and fraud from old corporate rivals, men who'd once sat in our boardrooms pretending to toast loyalty. My father had quietly collected their sins and locked them away like a dragon hoarding evidence instead of gold. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. If this ever got out, it would shake half the city's financial world. And Harris had been talking to those very same men during the lawsuit. They'd funded his legal team, no doubt hoping to carve up the company if I fell. I closed the box and sat on the cold floor, thinking, this was power, the kind my father had warned me about, sharp enough to cut its owner. When I left the warehouse, I didn't go home. I drove straight to Harris' condo. The guard at the gate didn't question me. Money, it seems, still recognizes its kin. He opened the door himself, eyes hollow, a whiskey glass in hand. "Come to gloat?" he said. "No," I said, stepping inside. "I came to give you a choice." He laughed bitterly. "You already took everything. What's left to choose?" I placed the metal box on his coffee table. "Our father kept this. It's proof of illegal deals between his old partners and the people who paid for your lawsuit. If I release it, they go to prison and you go with them." His face went pale. "You're bluffing." I met his eyes. "I don't bluff, but I also don't destroy family unless they insist on deserving it." He sank onto the couch, staring at the box like it might bite. "What do you want?" "Nothing," I said softly, "except silence and distance. Take Naomi, take your $1 million each, and disappear. I'll sign whatever settlement you want. But if you come near my business or my children again, I open that box, and your name becomes the cautionary tale they teach in ethics classes." He rubbed his face with trembling hands. "You're just like him," he muttered. "I'd take that as a compliment," I said. "But you're wrong. I learned mercy from Mother." He looked up, confused. "Mercy? Mercy," I repeated. "Because I'm giving you the chance to start over instead of burying you." When I left, the box was still on his table. Whether he'd open it or not didn't matter. I'd already won. Some truths only need to exist to keep people honest. A week later, word spread quietly that Harris and Naomi had moved to California, bought a vineyard, and retired from public drama. I didn't check if it was true. Peace doesn't require verification. The company flourished in their absence. The wage increases I'd promised stabilized morale, and the workers' council I created became a genuine part of our operations. For the first time in years, I felt proud without reservation. One evening, as I was locking up the office, he appeared, my once young lover, now my steadfast guard. His hair was longer, his eyes calmer. "You're still here?" he said, smiling. "I've been here all along," I replied. "Just quieter." He hesitated, then said, "The offer still stands. I'll keep you safe if you'll let me." I looked at him for a long moment. "You already do," I said. "Not because you guard me, but because you remind me I'm still alive." He reached out and touched my hand, careful, reverent. "You ever think about what comes next?" I smiled faintly. "Always, but I stopped planning revenge. Now I plan gardens." That spring, I hosted a charity gala in the same hotel where my siblings had once slandered me. The event raised millions for medical outreach programs, my daughter's cause. I walked the floor, shaking hands, laughing, feeling the rare ease of someone who stopped waiting for the next attack. When the speeches ended, I slipped outside to the terrace overlooking the Sound. The city lights trembled on the water. My guard followed quietly and stood beside me. "You did it," he said. "I did what?" "Turned a war into an empire." I laughed softly. "No, I just remembered who I was before they made me forget." He looked at me for a long time. "You're free now." I thought about that. Freedom, I'd learned, isn't absence of enemies. It's indifference to them. It's the ability to look at the past and not flinch. I turned to him. "Free, yes, but not finished." He smiled. "Then what will you do with the rest of your life, Laila Albright?" I looked out at the horizon, where the last light of the day met the dark water. "Live," I said simply. "Love, maybe. And build something they can't steal." He reached into his jacket pocket and handed me something small, a new cardboard crown, cut and glittered clumsily, just like the one I'd made for my father. "For the rightful queen," he said quietly. I laughed, tears threatening to betray me. "You're ridiculous." "Maybe," he said, "but so are the best stories." Months later, I returned to the Ballard warehouse one last time. I had it cleaned, restored, and transformed into an art gallery in my mother's name. Her paintings now hung in soft light, open to the public for free. On the wall near the entrance, I placed a single plaque, "The Laila Foundation, for those who remember that what's valuable can't be sold." As I walked through the gallery that first evening, I felt my father's presence not as a ghost, but as approval. The empire he built with figures and forecasts had evolved into something warmer, something human. Outside, a group of visitors stopped to take photos by the sign. One of them, a young woman, barely 30, looked at me and said, "You're Laila, aren't you? My mother used to work for your company. She said you were the reason she believed women could run anything." I smiled. "Your mother's right. We can." When they left, I stood alone in the fading light, the city humming beyond the glass. My phone buzzed, a text from my son. "Dinner tomorrow? No speeches, just mom time." I smiled and typed back, "Deal. Bring wine." Then as the lights dimmed in the gallery, I touched the frame of my mother's last painting, a woman standing in a field of gold, facing the sun. I whispered, "I kept it all, Dad. The love, the lessons, even the crown." And for the first time in years, I felt no anger, no sorrow, only peace. Because I had learned the truth of his final words. The thing they thought was valuable, they took. The thing that was truly valuable, I kept. And it was me.